All right, it is vlog number 76, coming to you high above northwest Reno, actually closer to southwest Reno, I guess, technically in an area that I haven't really been to in the last 20 years. I remember in this exact spot that I am now, it's kind of this hilly spot with a bunch of trees and dirt roads leading around. From the years 1999 until 2003 when I was in high school, my number one hobby was paintballing. Buddies and I would come up here and we'd shoot each other. My buddy Tyler Teese, best man at my wedding, he would team up with me, and the two of us would do quite well at that. Some fine memories, I must say. Hadn't been back up here since, but taking my boy Leo out for a run up here, and he just ran off, as you saw on the intro video, and he made a mad dash back up the hill here to me. But we are in part 2 of the most memorable hands that I've played in my career. And memorable hands can be either good or bad. I know there's that quote in rounders that will often be brought up. Few players recall the big pots they've won. Strange as it seems, but every player with remarkable accuracy can remember the outstanding tough beats of their career. So the hand that I actually thought of came back in January of 2013. So a decent amount after the hand that I brought to you the first time. And it came on a day where I was looking to do something that I'd never done before, and that is book a $3,000 win. I was up about $1,000 already on the day. I was crushing the game. And the game was very loose, passive, and full of unknowns, and that's who I ended up getting into this particular hand with. We get 4 limps, and I'm in the small blind with 6-4 offsuit.
Cruising down the street in my 6'4", jocking the bitches, slapping the hoes.
Premium hand. And make the call for an extra $2. Big blind checks. So we are 6 ways to a flop of 3, 5, 7, 2 spades. So I flop the straight, and I do what I still often do in this spot, and I decide to donk lead. I bet $25. I get 2 calls, and the button, an unknown guy, starts thinking about this. And this guy's playing very deep. I do have him covered. I said I was up 1,000 on the day, so I have 2,000 in front of me, and he had about 1,200. So he takes 2 $100 bills, which you could still do at the time when cash played, and put them into the pot. So he's making a big raise here. Folds back around to me, and I wasn't 100% sure how to play it, obviously, with the flush draw out there. I didn't like the idea of just calling and giving several of these players behind me a chance to catch. So I do what I think is actually not the best play, but part of me wanted to win the pot now that I faced this resistance. So I elect to just put this guy all in. I make the massive raise. Folds back around to him, and he starts thinking about this. And at that point, I had to believe that he might have a hand like ace deuce of spades, perhaps. And he was considering gambling the rest of his stack on. Even if he had bottom 2 pair here, I think it still warrants thinking about it for sure. Hell, even bottom set, I think you could debate. But he thinks about it for a good 2-3 minutes. And finally makes the call. So we are heads up in a massive pot, one of the biggest pots that I'd played to this point. The turn comes a 7, and the river comes another 7. He picks up his cards and just kind of looks at him for a second, and he doesn't turn them over. And I say, despite this horrendous run out, maybe I've still won. And he just goes, wow, that is so sick. And he turns over, pocket 4s. He immediately does not play one more hand, picks up and leaves. I don't know if he was just ashamed. I actually don't think that's what it was. I just think that he'd won the biggest pot of his life and said, well, it's like a casino. You know, you come in here to gamble and you know, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But he wasn't really the gambler type, I didn't think. I got the sense going into it that he kind of knew how to play, that he just said, you know what, this Ben guy's bluffing me out here. My pair of fours is good. That's honestly what I think he thought. But obviously I will never know for sure. So the brutal bad beat, we've all had them. I don't want to be the guy complaining about them, but I definitely still remember it, to say the least. And I remember thinking at the time, like, man, this is finally the day. I finally booked a $3,000 win. I've been working so hard now for several years. This is going to be my big day. Not the case. Ended up just being a slightly above average day. I still won on the day, amazingly, despite that. Won a little bit, but not much. Kind of had the feeling it might be a lot better than it ended up being. By the way, that cruising down the street in my 6'4" clip, that's a shout out to our boy Bugsy, for those of you who play poker at the Peppermill. He and I always bring that up whenever we see someone play that hand, because we once saw a guy call like 80 bucks pre-flop with it and flop a monster and win like this massive pot when he had absolutely no business playing the hand. It was absolutely hilarious. But anyway, one other thing I wanted to do was to provide an update. I didn't want to post just a separate video about it, but an update to the situation that got a lot of attention on this YouTube channel and a lot of other places, including the Dat Poker podcast last year after the Kentucky Derby. And the local doctor here in Reno by the name of Steve Friedlander went ahead and made a couple of bets on the Derby. And perhaps you saw this story. If you didn't, go check out the video. But he made a couple of Kentucky Derby bets, and he ended up nailing them, a trifecta and an exacta box. And the bets were supposed to pay over $600,000. And they would have paid that had he made the bet at Silver Legacy, Circus, Grand Sierra, any of the big casinos that have William Hill sports books. They would have paid that. But all the little casinos have books that are, quote, not pari-mutuel. It's the fine print in the sports betting industry that they hoped would never be found out about. So I did an update with him 1 year later to see where that stands. To some of you, it's not going to be a surprise at all. And if you already hate casinos, this isn't going to help.
An update to a story we first brought you a year ago. The Gaming Control Board has ruled against a local doctor on a pair of Kentucky Derby bets that supposedly paid out over $600,000. Steve Friedlander made the bets a year ago at the Tamarack Junction. The problem is that sportsbook, like all of the William Hill books at smaller casinos, is not pari-mutuel and has caps on all of these types of bets. Had he made the same bet at the GSR or Silver Legacy, he would have won the full amount. Instead, he's been told he will only get about 35 of that 600,000. Friedlander says he'd be happy not winning the money if he can help protect future bettors.
I think if William Hill came out and said, hey, you know what, we're not going to take these non-pari-mutuel bets anymore because they're confusing and misleading. They don't have to say that, but I mean, they are. But then I think I'd probably be satisfied with that and we can move on.
Friedlander has appealed the control board's ruling and the process is still ongoing.
So there you have it. Probably not a shock, but an update nonetheless that I wanted to give those of you who were either listeners to Dat Poker Podcast who had heard about that, or viewers of this channel that had seen it. So anyway, that is going to wrap it up for this. That is hand number 4 of the top 5 most memorable hands of my poker career. We'll have number 3 coming up next time. As always, if you haven't already, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Until then, we'll see you next time.